In a small village nestled between rolling hills and thick forests, there lived a young man named Obinna. He was hard-working, kind-hearted, and known for his wisdom beyond his years. His family believed it was time for him to settle down, so they sought the guidance of a well-respected village prophet. The prophet, with eyes that saw far beyond the physical world, told Obinna that his future wife would be a woman named Deborah. Excited and full of anticipation, Obinna eagerly awaited meeting his destined bride. A few weeks after the prophecy, Obinna met a beautiful woman at the market. Her warm smile caught his attention. "What's your name?" he asked, hoping this might be the Deborah the prophet spoke of. "Deborah," she replied sweetly. His heart skipped a beat. Perhaps this was her. As the days went by, Obinna began meeting more women, each one catching his interest in unique ways. Strangely, every time he asked for their names, they all replied, "Deborah." Before long, Obinna found himself surrounded by 6 equally beautiful women, all named Deborah. Each woman embodied qualities he admired. There was Deborah, the graceful dancer, who moved like the wind itself. Deborah the scholar, who could recite ancient wisdom with ease. Deborah the healer, who mended wounds and broken hearts. Deborah the cook, whose meals could make anyone feel at home. Deborah the musician, whose voice soothed the soul. And Deborah the merchant, who possessed wit and charm. Obinna's heart was torn. How could he choose the right Deborah? The prophecy had been clear, but it had not accounted for this twist of fate. Desperate for answers, he returned to the prophet's home, only to be met with devastating news. The old man had passed away the day before. The village mourned, but Obinna felt an added weight. He was now alone in his journey to find his true love. Despite his confusion, Obinna decided to be patient. He knew that love was not a matter to be rushed. He spent time with each Deborah, hoping that their interactions would reveal the true one. Deborah the dancer enchanted him with her elegance, but he wondered if their connection went deeper than physical beauty. The scholar intrigued him with her intellect, yet he questioned whether he needed someone who lived in books. The healer brought him peace, but was peace enough? The cook nourished him, but would food alone sustain their love? The musician's melodies touched his heart, but he feared it was fleeting. The merchant's wit fascinated him, but could charm alone build a life? As Obinna spent more time with each Deborah, he began to see past their outward talents. He learned about their dreams, fears, and ambitions. Deborah the dancer, for instance, revealed her desire to travel the world, while Deborah the healer spoke of her wish to build a clinic in the village. Deborah the musician longed for recognition, while the scholar dreamt of writing books. Each woman had a life and purpose of her own, and it became harder for Obinna to figure out which path was meant to intertwine with his. Obinna decided to test his feelings further. He organized an outing with all 6 Deborahs, hoping that being around them simultaneously would make things clearer. They laughed, they talked, and each Deborah showcased her uniqueness. Yet by the end of the day, Obinna was no closer to choosing his true love. Instead, he found himself more confused as his fondness for each woman grew. One day, while taking a walk to clear his mind, Obinna encountered an old woman sitting by the village river. She looked wise, her eyes filled with kindness. Sensing his troubled heart, she beckoned him over. "You're the man with too many Deborahs, aren't you?" she asked. Startled, Obinna nodded. The woman smiled knowingly. "The right one is in front of you. You just need to listen, not with your ears, but with your heart." Obinna took the old woman's advice to heart. He began listening more deeply during his interactions with the Deborahs. It was then that he noticed something small yet profound. One Deborah the healer, seemed to understand him in ways the others did not. Her words were simple, but always seemed to bring clarity to his thoughts. When he was with her, there was no need for grand gestures. They could sit in comfortable silence, yet he felt more connected to her than when he was laughing with the others. Over time, Obinna began to realize that his search for the right Deborah was not just about her talents or beauty. It was about who understood him, who made him feel at peace, and who shared his vision for the future. Deborah the healer wasn't the loudest or the most charming, but she was the one who made him feel whole. She saw through his confusion, through his doubts, and still stood by his side with a calm presence. As Obinna continued his time with Deborah the healer, he found himself drawn to her calmness. There was a certain unspoken bond that seemed to form between them. One evening they sat by the village well, gazing at the stars. Unlike his conversations with the other Deborahs, where he felt the need to impress or entertain, with the healer, there was a peaceful silence. She smiled at him, and it was as though they communicated without words. This connection left Obinna pondering. Was this quiet harmony the sign he had been waiting for? Though his bond with the healer was growing stronger, Obinna couldn't ignore the pull he felt toward the other Deborahs. He admired the scholar's intelligence, the dancer's grace, the merchant's wit, the cook's warmth, and the musician's passion. Each woman brought something unique to his life, and he found himself torn once again. His heart was leaning toward the healer, but his mind was still clouded with indecision. He wondered if he was making the right choice, or if he was missing out on something greater than the others. Deborah the merchant was perhaps the most captivating of the six in terms of charisma. One afternoon, Obinna spent time with her at her shop in the bustling village market. She spoke with such wit and confidence, effortlessly charming everyone who passed by. Obinna found himself laughing more than he had in weeks. Her sharp mind and quick humour were infectious, and he couldn't help but enjoy her company. As he left the market that day, he felt a wave of confusion. Was he too hasty in thinking that the healer was the one? On another day, Obinna visited Deborah the scholar at her home, where she showed him her collection of rare books. Her knowledge was vast, and she spoke passionately about ancient stories and forgotten legends. Obinna admired her intellect and the way she looked at the world through the lens of learning and discovery. They spent hours talking about history, philosophy, and the future of their village. He enjoyed her perspective on life and found her wisdom to be a refreshing contrast to the others. One evening, Obinna decided to test his compatibility with each of the Deborahs in a new way. He asked each of them what they would want their lives to look like 5 years from now. The answers varied greatly. The dancer dreamed of moving to the city and becoming famous. The musician wanted to tour different villages and share her songs. The merchant envisioned herself running a large business empire. The cook wished for a quiet life, surrounded by family. The scholar hoped to write books and teach the next generation. And the healer? She spoke softly of wanting to help others, to live a life of service and simplicity, preferably with someone who shared her values. After the healer's answer, Obinna couldn't shake a feeling of contentment. Her words stayed with him longer than the others. She didn't talk about grand ambitions or dreams of fame. Instead, her humility and genuine desire to care for others seemed to resonate with Obinna's own desires for a meaningful, peaceful life. That night, As he lay in bed, Obinna began to wonder if his connection with the healer went deeper than he had initially thought, despite his growing attachment to the healer. Obinna decided to spend more time with Deborah the cook. She invited him to her home, where she prepared a feast that filled his heart and belly with warmth. Her laughter was contagious, and she spoke lovingly about family and community. As they ate, Obinna realized how much he appreciated her ability to make everyone feel at home. But again, the question lingered in his mind. Was this the right kind of love for him? Deborah the dancer invited Obinna to watch her perform at a village festival. Her movements were mesmerizing, graceful, powerful, and full of emotion. The crowd was captivated, and Obinna felt a surge of admiration for her. When the performance was over, she joined him, and they talked late into the night. The passion she had for her craft was undeniable, but Obinna wondered if such a life, full of attention and movement, would align with his more quiet, reflective nature. Obinna's confusion only deepened as the days went on. He had grown fond of each Deborah in different ways, but none had touched him quite like the healer. He spent sleepless nights, weighing the qualities of each woman. Was love supposed to be a grand passion like the dancers, or a quiet companionship like the healers? Was intelligence or charm the key to a lasting relationship? The more he thought, the more confused he became. Finally, Obinna decided to seek spiritual guidance. With the prophet no longer alive, he prayed to the ancestors for clarity. Sitting under the village's ancient tree, he closed his eyes and meditated on the 6 women, asking for a sign. After hours of silence, a breeze brushed his face, carrying with it a whisper from within. Listen to your heart, not your head. The message was clear, but would Obinna have the courage to follow it? Obinna decided to spend more time with Deborah the healer, hoping to follow the message he had received. She invited him to her small garden, where she grew medicinal herbs. As they walked between the rows of plants, she explained the uses of each one, how some healed wounds, while others soothed the spirit. Her gentle voice carried a quiet wisdom, and Obinna felt a deep sense of peace in her presence. It was as though the garden reflected her soul, calm, nurturing, and full of life. But he still questioned whether peace alone was enough to build a lasting marriage. That evening, Obinna had a dream. In it, he saw himself many years into the future. He was older, sitting on the porch of his home, watching children play in the distance. Beside him sat a woman, though her face was hidden in shadow. She rested her hand on his, and he felt a sense of contentment that words couldn't describe. When he woke, he tried to recall the details, but the only thing that remained vivid was the feeling of warmth and belonging. He wondered if the dream was a glimpse of his future with one of the Deborahs. But which one? The next day, Obinna visited Deborah, the musician. She had invited him to listen to a new song she had composed. Her voice was like honey, smooth and soothing, and the lyrics spoke of love's journey, its highs and lows, the moments of doubt and certainty. The beauty of her performance moved Obinna, and for a moment he thought she might be the one. But as the last notes of the song faded away, so did his certainty. He enjoyed her music, but was their connection strong enough to last beyond the melody?